Aloha, inspired moneymaker. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. As you know, we cover a lot of topics here on Inspired Money. It ranges the gamut from investing to giving away to charities to classic cars and watches and wine. In the vein of, you often hear the phrase, the best investment you can make is in yourself. Today's episode is the power of networking, building meaningful connections for personal and professional growth. In this topic, some people love it, some people absolutely hate it, but I think that we can all agree on one thing. Networking is one of the most important skills in business and in life, and yet no one really teaches us how to do it. We graduate with degrees, we have resumes, maybe even have some internships, but too often we lack the tools to walk into a room of strangers and turn it into opportunity. Not the confidence to reach out on LinkedIn and make a real connection, not the know-how to transform small talk into big breakthroughs. Let me take you and tell you like a really quick story. Years ago, a friend of mine, she got laid off unexpectedly. Instead of panicking, she sent just one thoughtful message to someone she hadn't spoken to in 3 years. And that message turned into coffee. That coffee turned into a job offer in a totally new career direction. That's the power of networking. Whether you're ready to grow your business, reinvent your career, or just get better information and insights, your network is one of your greatest assets. But how do you build a network that actually works? What if you're an introvert? What if you're overwhelmed by going to a conference of 10,000 people? How you create meaningful, authentic relationships instead of shallow exchanges? That's what we want to address in this episode today. It's about answering those questions, and we've assembled a great panel of experts who've helped thousands of people to unlock powerful relationships. So stay tuned. I hope that you're going to walk away with practical tips, new ways about thinking of networking, and maybe, just maybe, the spark to make your next life-changing connection. Before we dive in, I want to thank today's sponsor. If you want to level up your investing game, listen up. For a limited time, you can get Seeking Alpha Premium and Alpha Picks. They're two most powerful investing tools bundled together for just $639 for the first year. That's 20% off the regular price. With Seeking Alpha Premium, you'll unlock deep research, stock screeners, and institutional grade analysis. And with Alpha Picks, you get 2 high conviction stock recommendations every month backed by data, research, and real performance. Seeking Alpha boasts that since launching in 2022, Alpha Picks has outperformed the S&P 500. Just as a heads up, past performance is no guarantee of future results, and this isn't personalized investment advice. Seeking Alpha is not a licensed broker or investment advisor. This is also an affiliate link, so I may earn a commission if you subscribe at no extra cost to you. It does support Inspired Money, so I thank you for that. You can go to inspiredmoney.fm/alpha bundle and start making more informed investment decisions today. Let's meet today's incredible lineup of guests, each of whom brings a unique perspective on how to build meaningful, game-changing relationships. First up, we have Susan RoAne, a true legend in the world of networking. She's the best-selling author of How to Work a Room and is affectionately known as the Mingling Maven. With over 1 million books sold and decades of speaking experience, Susan has helped audiences around the world master the art of confidently connecting in any room, whether it's a conference, a cocktail party, or a Zoom call. If you've ever wondered what to say after hello, Susan is your go-to guide. Susan, welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Next, we're joined by J. Kelly Hoey, a dynamic networking expert, speaker, and author of Build Your Dream Network. Kelly's work is all about modern relationship building, how to make meaningful connections in a digital-first world. She's advised executives, entrepreneurs, and creatives alike on how to grow their networks with intention and impact. If you think networking is all business cards and small talk, I think Kelly will change our minds. Kelly, so glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Andy.
Joining us as well is David Spinks, a thought leader in community building and the author of The Business of Belonging. David co-founded CMX, the leading professional network for community builders, and has worked with companies like Google, Facebook, and Airbnb to build thriving, values-driven communities. Today, he coaches leaders and founders on how to lead with clarity, presence, and purpose. And his insights on belonging are more relevant than ever. David, so glad that you're here.
Happy to be here.
And rounding out our panel today, we have Matthew Pollard, also known as the Rapid Growth Guy. Matthew is the best-selling author of The Introverts Edge, a series of books, and he's globally recognized as a sales and networking expert. He's built 5 multi-million-dollar businesses and was just named Selling Power's 2023 Sales Kickoff Speaker of the Year. Matthew is living proof that introverts, and he's here to show us how. So glad that you're here.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, with this dream team of experts, we're diving deep into the power of networking, from small talk strategies to long-term relationship building, and how even the most unexpected conversations can lead to transformational outcomes. Let's get started with segment 1.
Networking is more than just exchanging business cards or connecting online. It's about building relationships with intent. Choosing the right networking approach depends on personal preferences, industry demands, and long-term goals. In-person networking offers immediate feedback, stronger rapport, and trust-building opportunities. It includes conferences, meetups, and industry events, where spontaneous conversations often lead to unexpected opportunities. For introverts, smaller gatherings or structured networking groups can provide a more comfortable environment. Online networking extends reach beyond geographical limits, allowing professionals to connect through platforms like LinkedIn, Twitter, or industry-specific communities. Each platform serves different purposes: LinkedIn for professional branding, Twitter for thought leadership, and niche forums for specialized discussions. A hybrid approach combines both, leveraging online tools to maintain connections formed in person. Strategic engagement, consistency, and follow-ups ensure networking remains a valuable tool for personal and professional growth.
Matthew, you argue that introverts can be the best networkers with the right system. How did you go from painfully shy and terrified to thriving in sales, networking, and public speaking?
Well, I think to answer your networking question, I think I threw away the elevator pitch. I feel like most introverts would rather have a root canal than go out networking, especially if they have to do the traditional elevator script, which is, I do this for this group of people, even if, which basically just sounds so transactional. I mean, when I first moved to the United States, I made the decision that I was going to help introverts, predominantly introverts that wanted to grow businesses. And I wanted to teach them the skills that I'd learned over the years, because I also fell into sales and had no business being in sales either. And I remember the first time I started to explain what it was that I did. And I remember them telling me about this gym that they owned. And they asked me after about 10 minutes of explaining what they did, what I did. And I said, "Oh, I'm a sales trainer." And oh my gosh, I wish I didn't say that, because he then for the next 5 minutes explained the bad experiences he had. He looked at me like I was one step above a scam artist. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. And maybe I'll say I'm a marketer next time. Well, so I said I was a marketer the next time. And straight away I got this, "Oh, I need marketing. How much do you cost?" And I'm like, "Well, I just met you. Now we're talking about price." And then the next person said, "Oh, I've already got someone in marketing. And I've got magic ruby slippers. What do you say to that?" So what I realized is there needed to be a new way of explaining what I did. And I needed to create a category of my own. And if we get time, I mean, that's why I call myself the Rapid Growth Guy. But when somebody asks me what that is, because it basically breaks their brain, they're like, "Well, I don't know what box to put that in. Plus, I've been interested before I try to be interesting." I will then respond with, well, one of the things I love to see more than anything in the world is an amazing introverted service provider with enough talent, skill, and belief in themselves to start a business of their own. I just find, and I just hate seeing this, they get stuck in this endless hamster wheel of struggling to find interested people, trying to set themselves apart, trying to make the sale, feeling like people only care about one thing: price. Do you know anyone like that? And now I'm asking for them to give me permission to continue on. When they say I am like that, I will then say, well, my mission is, and I will then go into my mission, and then maybe I'll go into a story. But it becomes a dialogue because they're asking me questions, as opposed to saying I have this functional skill, which gets shut down, or saying an elevator pitch, which, I mean, let's face it, most introverts aren't going to do that. We do this aimless networking thing, which is basically underselling ourselves and walking out with a bunch of business cards. Nobody calls us and we don't call them. So the whole thing is pointless.
I love the testing that you went through. Susan, I want to ask you, because you teach the self-introduction not as an elevator pitch, it's a pleasantry. What's your formula for a great introduction?
Well, I totally agree with Matthew. Elevator pitches should be pitched, and don't even do them in an elevator, because no one got in that small little room riding up and down to hear you talk about yourself. That's number one. The self-introduction has 3 parts to it. The first is, it is a pleasantry. It's 7 to 9 seconds. If you go on 30 seconds about yourself, my eyes are rolling in the back of my head and you can hear it. 7 to 9 seconds, it's a pleasantry. The second trait is you give people context for why you're there. So they know what makes you be in that room. That helps them connect with you. And the third one, and I got this from my friend Patricia Fripp, outstanding executive speech coach, first woman president of National Speakers Association. She said to me one day, RoAne, calls me by my last name, you tell them not to give their title. What you give, and this kind of links to what Matthew said briefly, is the benefit of what you do. I had that happen to me. I was going to the same coffee shop to write. I was writing What Do I Say Next? And I'd see this guy there every time. And one day we had a power outage. So I had to reorganize my writing. And we started to talk. And he asked me what I did. He could tell I had paper and pencil. Yes, that's how I wrote my books. And I asked him what he did. And he said this: I help rich people sleep at night. Oh my God. I said, oh, what pharmacy do you work for? But the reality is, he said, oh, I'm a financial planner. So what he did is he hooked me in with the benefit. And you know, we've been friends ever since. So it's about giving people something that they can connect with. And here's the Susan RoAne, and this is everyone who's listening, watching. Bring who you are to what you do. People connect with who you are. What you do is secondary.
Be a person first. David, I want to ask you, because you revealed a secret on LinkedIn this morning. You kind of hate networking. How does networking differ from community building?
Yeah, it's a good question. I see networking as something that comes as a result of the work you do and the relationships you build over time. So I think people tend to see networking as, oh, if I network enough, then I will be successful and I will be able to build great things. And in my experience, it's just gone the other way. By building great things, by building great communities, the network emerges from there. The difference between a network and a community. So a network, you're generally looking at the individual as the node. So if it's my network, I'm connected to all of these different people and I'm the center. A community looks a lot more like a web. So lots of different people all connected to each other, and it's more interconnected in a way. And another thing I've experienced in my career is the best way to actually build your network is to build community, not to get everyone to know you and for you to make all the connections, but to be connecting people with each other and creating this more interwoven ecosystem that will really lead to you having a strong network and put you in a position where people see you as a gatherer, as an organizer, which is a really powerful place to be.
I love that perspective. Kelly, you talk about the shift from who you know to who knows what you know. What role does having a digital presence play in building a credible network? And a shout out to your 500,000 LinkedIn followers.
I hope they're all watching right now. Yes, people also say the eras of it's, what you know or who you know. And I said, no, we live in the era of who knows what you know. Because right now, we are all having this great conversation on networks and networking and introverts and, small talk and introductions. And, oh, God, I hate elevator pitches, too, people are looking us up online. So as I like to say, you're networking when you're sleeping, because people may be looking up, your digital presence. And if you're really lucky, to pick up on David's point, you got a community of people who are talking you up. Or, as Matthew pointed out, somebody who's had a great experience with you, working with you, is recommending you to somebody else. So in this era, you need to think, as I like to say, every human interaction is a chance to build a relationship. And that can happen in a multitude of different places. And having that is kind of freeing, because David's point of hating networking, just schmoozing for the sake of it, like, why? There's other things we can do with our time, like a sofa and Netflix. But, it's also kind of scary, because every text, every post, every interaction with someone else, be it a colleague, a sales call, you name it, standing in the line, getting on a plane, could lead to something. We just don't know in this day and age.
How strategic or intentional do you have to be in like your LinkedIn profile and what you're posting about? I mean, Susan talked about, being human, putting the benefit out there first. Is it similar doing it online, or is it different?
Well, I think of networking spaces. I'd love to hear everybody else's. I think of them the same way I do as physical spaces. So how you are interacting, like, let's take an example, you get a promotion. How you would describe that with your professional colleagues or industry groups is likely different than how you would describe it to your friends and family, which is different than how you would be sitting with, a group of mates, in a pub having a pint and celebrating your promotion. It's still you, but the conversation is slightly different. So I think you need to contextualize these things. I also think you need to be very clear on what it is you want to be known and found for. So probably like everybody here, I'm thinking Susan talking before her first teaching job in the Haight in San Francisco. My first career was as an attorney. I sure as heck don't want people calling me on banking and insolvency law, though those jobs, particularly insolvency, are in high demand right now. Not what I want to be called on. So you need to think about, what is it that I want to be found for? What is it that I want to start and initiate and have other people initiate and continue conversations with me about?
Who else wants to weigh in?
I'm going to weigh in. I started in Chicago in the bad old days, but when I was here, and I still do this, I was the language arts teacher, and one of my biggest successful students ended up being a stand-up comic who won the Seattle comedy competition. I told everyone I gave him his start. I still do this, though. I still, in my mind, correct people's grammar, and I have a T-shirt that says that. But I like what you said. It's so funny, because when I did my first career change for workshop, at San Francisco State, a woman there was an attorney, and she said, "Is there any career change workshops?" Mine were for teachers, for attorneys. I said, "No, why don't you start one?" And she did, and that became her career. I think there's so many things out there, but we as humans need to support people in what they're interested in. And I love the idea of what you said about community. And I'm going to correct this. I have 2 separate books. Working a room is not networking. They have nothing in common with each other. There's not a word similar. Knowing how to work a room is really about socializing. Knowing how to network is the process that happens afterwards, where you build and stay in touch with people. And I would underscore this. those incidental conversations in line at the airport awarded me 2 friends that I have stayed in touch with. In fact, one of whom moved here, and I watched Good Night and Good Luck with her the other day. So, if we look at everything as what is the purpose and what can I get out of it, I think we're screwing ourselves. We need to be just a little bit more relational rather than transactional.
I would actually add to that, Andy. I think networking starts before you go into any networking room as well. I mean, when I first got invited to this, there was a post that went out and shared all the panelists you were going to have. And so the first thing I did is I connected with everybody that was going to be on the panel. On top of that, I noticed that there were some people attending. So shout out to Jason Lewis, who is also an attendee on this, as he's just watching along. And I know that he's in New York. I know all about him. And I'm so blown away when I speak at events. A lot of times people are like, oh, I just never know who's going. And it's funny, I spoke at an event for Intel a while back, and one of the attendees came up afterwards and we talked for about 20 minutes. And he's like, oh, but it's easy to talk to you. I know all about you. I've just seen you present for an hour. I can't do that with everyone here. And it was the global meetup for the heads of global sales, the head of global marketing. I was like, what I know about Intel is you're considered a newbie if you've been there for less than 20 years. So is it fair to assume that most of these people were there last year? Was there not an attendance list that went out? Yeah, but I don't know anything about them. I'm like, can you not connect with them on LinkedIn beforehand? I mean, for me, when I go to a networking room, I want to know who's going to be in the room. There is no way I'm going to go into a networking room unprepared, because then I'm going to end up speaking to someone that's going to try and sell me insurance. What my focus is before I go to any meetup, I mean, meetup.com it was an example of this. You go to their LinkedIn profiles. Some people are like, oh, but there isn't, a way that I can easily check, but there is a conference app. Well, I can match the names of the people with the photos on LinkedIn and easily work out what they do. And some people will say, well, that takes a lot of time. And I'm like, well, firstly, I can get someone on my team to do that. But secondly, it takes a lot more time to talk to someone that's going to try and sell me insurance as opposed to someone I really want to talk to. And then sometimes people will say, well, actually, I can't even do that because there is no app. And I'm like, well, okay, what else can we do? Let me look. Is there a Facebook group about the meetup? Well, yeah, there is. Well, who went last month? Are they tagged? Great. Let's look those people up on LinkedIn and see what they do. And then I connect with everybody in advance, and not everybody, but the people I want to speak to. And I say, oh, I'm really interested. I'm really, on a mission to help introverts realize they're not second-class citizens. Their path to success is just different. Is there a lot of introverts that come to this event? And half the time I'm going to get, well, I'm an introvert. Yeah, you should absolutely come. Or I'm an extrovert. Don't worry. I'll show you I'll introduce you to everybody. I don't know why extroverts think we need babysitting, but for some reason they think we do. But for me, I find that by going into any room, I want to make sure it feels like a bunch of pre-planned meetings. So then when I walk in and there's a whole bunch of familiar faces. And every now and then I'll walk up and somebody will look at me weird, and then they'll realize that we connected on LinkedIn and they're dying to come and speak to me. Why? Because they're introverted and they are worried about speaking to someone that's going to sell them insurance or someone that they don't know. So all of a sudden I got a 50-50 chance that half the room's dying to speak to me because they don't know anyone there. And the other half are dying to help me meet everybody, because then they've got an excuse to talk to everybody because they're extroverted. Plus, I know everything about them because I've checked out what books they've just been posting about. It just feels like I'm coming into a warm audience with a bunch of already existing friends as opposed to starting fresh.
I love it. So invest some of the time up front. It will save you time on the back end. Let's go into segment 2.
Approaching new connections can feel intimidating, but confidence grows with preparation and practice. A clear introduction, strong posture, and active listening set the stage for meaningful conversations. First impressions matter. Tone, eye contact, and body language influence how interactions unfold. Active listening goes beyond hearing words. It includes responding with thoughtful follow-up questions, observing nonverbal cues, and demonstrating engagement. Asking open-ended questions encourages deeper discussions and builds stronger connections. Networking is not just about receiving, it's about offering value. Sharing relevant insights, making introductions, and supporting others without immediate expectations strengthens relationships. Thoughtful follow-ups reinforce connections, showing genuine interest. Cultural differences shape communication styles, making awareness essential for respectful interactions. Whether in person or online, the key is consistency. Regular check-ins, shared insights, and celebrating others' successes turn brief introductions into long-term professional relationships.
So in the previous segment, we established elevator pitches not so good. Susan, you often speak about leaning into the greeting. What are the subtle body language cues that make a big difference?
Well, I'll address that, but I'd want to say to our audience, body language is not a science. So, but it gives us a hint. When we lean in to a greeting, and by the way, during the pandemic, I said, please don't shake hands. Now we're back to doing that. When we lean into a greeting, we're extending ourselves and actually welcoming. If we greet someone like this, we don't look like we really mean the greeting. So leaning in is something that's really important. And when you go to exit, you don't lean in. You just stand, because leaning in has a different meaning. One of the things that I think about is that we have made networking a pariah. And by the way, I know a lot of really dirty, bad words, really, and I say them all the time, and networking's not one of them. I won't give you examples of ones that are. So I think when people, and the people who are negative on networking forget that, and I did write this as a tweet and post, all the people bad-mouthing networking are always happy when they are the recipient of information, leads, advice, referrals, etc.
Kelly, you stress the importance of active listening. How do you stay fully present and engage in conversations? I know that if I'm in a room, how do you resist looking around the room or thinking about what you should say next?
It's hard. It's hard because I think we all think we're good at, listening, but what we're really good is at hearing. And the best thing you can do in terms of making a connection is to be fully present. I think it goes to what Matthew said before, understanding why you're in the room in the first place. Why are you choosing to devote your time and energy in a particular way? I think it's opening yourself to be curious and interested. And you sort of get all these combination of factors. But if you know why you're in the room and why you want to be why you're looking to engage with people there, right? This is where you've got a conversation starter. This is where you sort of think, oh, I don't need to think about what am I going to say next? What am I going to say next? Let me just hear what this person has to say. And from there, we'll be able to pull threads and see where it goes. So, I think active listening is one of the most difficult and most important skills you can work on. And it's not a part of networking that people prioritize because we've been so fixated on how do we polish up our elevator pitch, and what's the right way to do this and what's the right way to do that. And it's like, why don't you just listen? Why don't you just listen and see where it goes?
Matthew, I love the preliminary work that you do ahead of an event, finding people on LinkedIn, trying to connect, doing some research. It really helps to build, I think, your confidence. And then when you have an interaction with that person, it's like you got a head start. Do you have favorite go-to conversation starters or techniques that turn the small talk into something more meaningful?
Yeah, absolutely. And just so everyone's aware, when I go into a networking room, because I haven't just connected with people, they've responded. So now most people don't know this. And if you don't, this is by far one of the best features in the world, especially for sales, to get those people that have ghosted you to come back to the table. And just like introverts are great at, lead with empathy when you do this, but you can actually send audio messages from LinkedIn now through your iPhone or your Android phone. And people always respond really for one of two reasons. One is because they want to respond, or the other is they want to know how you did that. And because of that, you can actually get people to engage. So what I will do is I'll connect with people, but then I will send them an audio message and I'll start the dialogue before we even get there. So they've seen my face a few times. I've seen their face a few times. So when I get there, it's really easy. I'll literally walk into a room and I will see somebody's face that I recognize. And the moment that I start the dialogue, they'll be, Matt, I can't believe you reached out to me on LinkedIn beforehand. I should do that more. It's really easy. I don't really need to do any work. Now, I will say that, I interviewed Ivan Meisner on my podcast. He's the founder of BNI. And he's a really good friend of mine. Every time I go back to Austin, I get a chance to go to his house. And he talks about open pairs, and he goes into detail on it. So I won't waste everybody's time on it today, but I would really suggest go to the Introverts Edge podcast and watch him kind of break down exactly what you should do. But he also highlighted that what you would consider the best skills, he did a survey for all the BNI network, and the best skills, or the things that people appreciate most from networking, wasn't the big bravado personalities, it was far more the person that actually listened and paid, more importantly, wasn't thinking about what to say next, but actually listened to what you said and asked follow-on questions. Now, I do want to be clear, because a lot of people, when somebody asks them what they do, respond in a different way. They don't answer the question. They don't talk about their functional skill. They don't deliver an elevator pitch. They think they're being clever, and they say, oh, I just start asking them more questions. I'm like, oh, that's great. Everybody wants to be interrogated the moment they meet you. It's not the answer that they should focus. It's not what you should focus on. I think that what most people need to do is they need to be interested first, but if they haven't done the homework beforehand, then they're making it much harder on themselves when they walk into the networking room. I honestly, when I walk into a room, I always recognize a face. I literally will walk in, and the first thing that I do is I slow walk to the bar. If I don't see someone I meet, someone I know, I then start to slow walk to the restroom. And then and this happens maybe 5% of the time, I haven't seen someone, I will imagine that I've left something in my car, and I'll go back outside quickly. Now, I don't get in the car and I drive away. I got to remind myself to turn around and go back. But then when I'll slow walk back in, I will run into someone. Now, when I'm doing that, I'm casually looking to the left, I'm casually looking to the right. But usually I don't have to do any of that. I walk in, and because of the dialogues I've had before, I'm always straight into a conversation with somebody I've met. But if I do meet someone that I don't know, I do ask them what they do, because everybody likes to talk about that. And then I start thinking about people in my network that might be helpful to them. So instead of asking questions and listening to the answers to ask more questions, I'm actually listening to think about who in my network would be really helpful for them to meet. And it might be a podcaster that I know that they would really do well on that person's podcast, or it might be someone I know who's part of an association. And the rule of thumb that I have is, if I think about 3 introductions that the person, if I've randomly met someone that might be valuable, I'll offer the first one. And then I'll keep talking, and then I'll offer the second one. And by the time I'm thinking about, I want to hold back the third. And the reason why I hold it back is, if they don't offer an introduction or a suggestion at that point, I may not offer the third. But if they offer if they offer an introduction, I will then offer the third. And then the moment I leave, I will send 2 of those introductions, but not the third. And then I'll wait a week or 2 and send the third one. And what I'm trying to do is I'm prompting them that sometimes they forget. And I want to make sure that they send the introduction. And I don't want to say, hey, dude, you promised me an introduction. So the third, a couple of weeks later, gets them to go, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I got 2 introductions from you before. I didn't do it. Let me do it now. And it makes sure that I get that meaningful introduction that would be really helpful to me. So I find that by thinking about who would be valuable to them, by listening to them, it allows me to really be an asset to them from day one.
David, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think building on what Kelly was sharing earlier, I was thinking about how it's so easy to be distracted. And so it made me start thinking about my meditation practice. And I've talked about networking as a form of kind of conversational meditation, right? It's hard enough to be alone with our own thoughts without getting lost in thoughts and getting distracted, but to talk to someone else and to be actively listening to them without getting lost in thought, also pretty hard. So I kind of look at it like meditation. In the same way, when I notice my thoughts are drifting, just gently bring myself back to the person, bring my attention back, and just practice, right? It's being present is a practice. And I agree that presence is what's really important. For me, I don't want to come with too much of like a plan or an agenda or a framework for how I want to network with someone, or else I'm going to come across really, just in my experience, inauthentically, like way too practiced. So what I find is if I could just really be present, I can follow the natural energy of a conversation. Figure out what am I genuinely curious about, not something to get an opportunity, not like the right one-liner to make a connection, but like, what did I hear this person say that I have a genuine curiosity about? Then I can follow that. And the same thing applies to who I'm talking to. So I find that like, if I'm going into an event and I'm trying to talk to everybody and like optimize all of these connections, I'm going to get exhausted. It's probably not going to work. But what I'll do is try to have a number of conversations until I meet someone where there's a very authentic, energetic connection. Like I actually want to talk to this person. I'm actually curious. Then the conversation becomes much easier because again, I'm just following the natural energy of the people around me and the conversation, and I let it flow naturally rather than trying to manufacture something that isn't naturally occurring for me. That's how I think about it.
Oh, go
Can
ahead.
I just say, I love that. I might have to credit you with that. There's no such thing as manufactured mingling.
Yeah.
And I would say
you can
this
have that one. You could have manufactured
I know
mingling.
I'm
That's
going
a
to
good
quote
one.
you because that's a skill of networkers. We always attribute and acknowledge. But the other thing, what you said about agenda, everyone that you've ever met that has an agenda, it's as if it's written on their forehead. Their behavior supports that they have an agenda. So I'm 100% with you. Adjust who you are for the audience. You don't talk to a 4-year-old the way you talk to a 40-year-old, but being more organic, I think, has attributes.
Wanted to just, if I can, Andy, when we're starting this off talking about listening and active listening, I think if anybody would be sort of the expert on this panel on that, it's got to be David with community building. Because if you're not listening to the community, right? I think of Tina Roth Eisenberg, the founder of Creative Mornings, who I interviewed in my book, Build Your Dream Network. As she said, the most important layer of building that successful global network, that community, was listening to the bottom layer, who are the volunteers, and protecting and guarding who they are before she took sponsorship, before she went as a business model, because without listening to them, the whole thing crumbled. But David, I see you nodding there, so maybe I've hit the right tone. But without listening, there is no community.
Yeah, I'm also a member of the Tina Roth Eisenberg fan club. So yeah, she's amazing.
Well, I love the idea that when you have a community, you can build trust at scale. One quick question for David: when you run a community, do you ever struggle with the feeling that everybody knows you by name, but you don't know everybody?
Like the Norm
Like
Peterson.
that's a little bit of a struggle, right? Sometimes.
Yeah. So yeah, we're talking about like the parasocial relationship that's very common in this internet age, right? It happens for community builders where you're kind of the facilitator, happens for content creators, anyone on a stage. Anytime where there's people who are consuming a lot from you and really feel like they get to know you really well, but you don't have that same reciprocal familiarity with them. And it's hard, right? I try to just be honest. One little thing that I do is just say nice to see you instead of nice to meet you, just in case we've met before. And yeah, I just try to be honest. If they're like, oh, we've met before, I might just say like, I'm sorry, I don't remember, but I'd love to get to know more about you now, and just use it as an opportunity to open up the conversation.
So honesty is often the best policy. Let's go on to segment 3.
Mentorship and sponsorship serve different purposes in career development. A mentor provides guidance, shares insights, and helps navigate challenges. A sponsor, however, actively advocates for career advancement, using their influence to create opportunities. Both relationships require trust, mutual respect, and clear expectations. Finding a mentor starts with identifying career goals and researching professionals with relevant experience. Approaching a potential mentor should be intentional. Clear communication about goals and respect for their time are essential. A strong mentorship is built through preparation, active engagement, and follow-through. Sponsorship is different. Sponsors look for high-potential individuals who demonstrate readiness for more responsibility. Visibility, reliability, and strong performance increase the chances of attracting a sponsor's support. Whether seeking mentorship or sponsorship, the key is to provide value, maintain professionalism, and foster meaningful connections that contribute to long-term career growth.
Kelly, I read that you liked mentoring junior colleagues back when you were practicing law. How can we seek out mentors and build mutually valuable relationships?
I had a phenomenal mentor early in my career, and as he used to say, he liked to train his assassins. It made his business, like, and you think about when you have a business unit, which a practice in a law firm is, you have that business unit. How do you create that loyalty? How do you create that commitment when people have other opportunities? So he was an extraordinary mentor. So I think for me, it was based on that personal experience and how that was so transformative for my own career. In this day and age, when people feel so time poor, like the slightest demand, because I don't know how many of others on this panel, someone has said to them, "Oh, could you mentor me on?" And as soon as you see the word, you're like, no, I don't have the time for that. But when people approach you with a specific question, Susan, I read in, your book, how to work a room, that you said this. What would you do in this context? David, you built this community. Like Matthew, I'm an extrovert, and my team's all introverts. How could I manage them better? What would be more appropriate? All of a sudden, you can answer that question. So I think in this era of demands, and some of it is perceived time lack, the idea of like considering mentoring more of where is something I have a challenge with, and somebody else can help me get through that challenge. How could they answer this question? And then I think the things we've talked about earlier, and that's come up earlier about networking, where are you following up? Where are you being generous and sharing information? All those other things that we could do as being a decent human being and a gracious and generous networker can further and build, maybe a one-time, Q&A exchange into a longer-term relationship where someone is committed to your future potential and your long-term career growth. But for the networking to get a mentor right now, I'd think about it in the context of what is it, that challenge I'm facing? What is the question that I have? Where is something like I'm really noodling with? And why is this the best person to ask that question to?
David, what role does visibility play in attracting sponsorship?
Not sure what you mean. You mean like me being visible to attract people who want to support me?
Yeah, I'm curious. How can you, you talked about authenticity, approaching networking in an authentic way. And I'm wondering, how can people increase their visibility in authentic ways?
I like to, so I'm a little different than I think a lot of people and how they build their personal brand. I think there is the approach of like, you have your niche, you have your professional brand, and you just like really stick to that. I tend to bring a whole lot of myself into everything I put out there in the world. I share really vulnerable things. I share really tough experiences in my life. I talk about being a dad. I talk about hiking. So I, as a human, contain multitudes, right? Way beyond my professional identity. And I like to really bring all of that into how I show up online, even in conversations I have with someone at an event. It's almost like if you go right at the business thing, it doesn't work. But if we kind of meander and I bring my whole self to the conversation, there's a greater likelihood that we'll strike serendipity, right? Something will come up that's like, oh, we have a spark, we have a connection, and that can lead to much better business outcomes than if you just went right in and tried to get a business outcome or a sponsorship or a mentorship or something like that.
Susan, this sounds aligned with your writings.
It is. I just said it. Bring who you are to what you do. Okay, example. Last week, my 34-year-old microwave died, and I didn't know how I was going to eat. So I went online and looked for a replacement because it had to be 18-inch countertop. And I finally found one because I went to 5 stores and I found a woman who really knew her stuff at, believe it or not, Best Buy, and she got me, my accent colors are red. She took one look at me and she did this. You can have a red microwave. You are sassy. So I had my neighbor who had to teach me how to use it because he's an IT guy, take a video. And I posted it all over social media with me showing my, that I could finally eat again because I have a red microwave. That was bringing everyone into my kitchen. And I even said that my oven had been untouched for 5 years. Bring who you are to what you do. I don't have kids, but everyone knows that I'm Grandma Susan to several families. About 2 of the guys played football at Stanford and 1 at the 49ers, so everyone was nice to me. And do you just see what I did? By way of preposition, we can bring something into the conversation. So some person who didn't have kids said, oh, I didn't have kids either, but I'm Auntie so-and-so. You know, bring who you are to what you do. And David, I totally agree with you. So many of the people who have intentions, you should know why you're in the room. Why'd you get dressed? And for me, put on makeup to go somewhere. But the other thing is so much happens organically, serendipitously, meant to be, that we need to embrace that opportunity. And I'm going to take the line from Hamilton. We need to always be where I want to be, in the room where it happens. And what we just don't know is what's going to happen.
I love putting that information out there and then continuously connecting the dots, seeing where people can connect, who you can connect, and how these different things can be put together. And
can I just add one thing, David?
Please do.
When I wrote Secrets of Savvy Networking, I had a chapter called Mentor Mania. And it started because a gentleman that I was in a workshop with who went to the Ford leadership said to me, someone came up to him and said, like Valentine's Day, will you be my mentor? He said, boy, did I say no. Mentorship evolves. Some companies have formal, but sometimes it's based on commonality because you like the same team, because you go to the same church or synagogue, because you both like, I'm from Chicago, deep dish pizza. Sometimes it starts with a little thing that connects you and it turns into mentorship. And I remember the woman who wrote the sponsorship book. A lot of us went, yeah, that's mentorship. You just figured out a new title, a new way. Mentors also do some of those same things that I heard described as sponsors. But what we all need to know is that, like you did this for, you said your lawyer mentor gave you so much. We need to turn around and do that for others. We all think there's one person, and I talked about having moms, mentors of moments. My teacher mentor wasn't the same as my speaker mentor, wasn't the same as my author mentor. Have moms. And that's my last plug.
Andy, if I may, like I always think of it, like when we talk about sponsorship, where am I going to, in a public way, expend valuable resources that are going to reflect on me for the benefit of somebody else? And I think that's where sponsorship is sort of like this higher stakes. right? Like I may expand, like I'm vouching for this person, you need to give them a promotion, or you need take this meeting, this person is going to deliver. And all of a sudden there's a massive reflection on me. And so that's where sort of sometimes I think with formal sponsor programs, I'm like, yeah, I kind of see this. You need someone to help you navigate through. But when I think of sponsorship, I think of it as someone noticing the work somebody else is doing, the product they're producing, the results they're having, the community they're building, whatever it is. And I'm like, you know what? I am going to either enhance or diminish my social capital, my reputation, by kicking the door open for them or bringing them into a room that they're not already in, because I believe in what they're doing. And by the way, it's going to help them. And guess what? They'll help me too.
Matthew, that balance of providing value, sharing value, is that the key to remaining top of mind with mentors or sponsors without coming across as pushy?
It's an interesting question. I think that I'm going to answer this by throwing myself under the bus a little bit. I'm not sure if do Americans have that saying, throw yourself under the bus? I know it's
we do.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I think we might have
I live in
invented
the
it.
States now. I feel like I'm the only one that says it. I think for me, going back, I know that Susan kind of mentioned Patricia Fripp. One of I call them champions, by the way. I believe like if you trade in the word sponsor for the word champion and momentum partner, I'll explain the difference in a second. But I met one of my champions who's championed my work a ton over the years at an event where I did everything wrong. And I think it's okay to recognize that you did things wrong. And I think going back to David's point, being open and honest about that is actually really powerful. So for me, I remember this was my first big keynote out of state. And I got asked to speak at the Sales 2.0 conference. And so I flew to Philadelphia and I did this keynote. And back then I was just starting. And now I can do about a half a day before I'm exhausted. Back then I could do about 45 minutes. And so I did my 45-minute presentation. And I remember sitting down, and after that event, I saw the person walk up on stage right after me, and I mentioned to the person sitting next to me, oh, that's the person that I always look for 3 people to talk to, which is one of the lessons you learn as a speaker. And that person was giving me so much energy, and it was like he wanted me to win on stage. And so I made that comment. And then I retracted into my phone because I was exhausted and I had to shut down. And I realized that I did it about 35 minutes in, but there's nothing I could do at that point. Anyway, the next day I got asked to stay back, and there was a training getting done on mindset that the founder of the event was running. And I know he asked me to give feedback, and he asked a couple other people as well. So we didn't know who were giving feedback and who were students. I mean, it was obvious some of the speakers were there, but this one person kept giving feedback and I kept giving feedback. So I walked up to him halfway through the event and I said, look, I need to introduce myself. Because I felt like I ignored your whole presentation, and truthfully, I didn't want to. And you gave me so much energy, and I'm really sorry about that. I'm just very introverted, and 45 minutes is about all I've got until I need to retreat. And I didn't want to leave the room, but I needed to retreat for about 40. And unfortunately, that was your entire event. Anyway, we got talking for ages, and then he handed me his card. Turns out it's Jim Cathcart, the only 2-time president of the National Speakers Association. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I get on the plane before I look at his card because we were talking and conversing and he had to leave. Anyway, I look at his card and I sent him a message that said nothing more than, I am so sorry. I didn't realize I was speaking to speaker royalty. Anyway, again, please accept my apologies. It was wonderful to get to know you a little bit better. Anyway, he sends me, and I mentioned that I was sorry that I missed his speech. He sent me the 4-hour version of his speech. So I stopped that day and I watched the full 4 hours, and I gave him positive feedback, of course, because he's exceptional, but also I mentioned a couple of introductions and other new science that had recently come out that actually proved some of the things he was saying that I thought might be helpful. Anyway, after that, we organized a call, and we've been best of friends ever since. So you don't have to get, your version of sponsorship, what I call a champion, you don't have to get it right straight away. But the truth is, if Jim asked me to go and pick up his dry cleaning, I'd fly to California and do that for him. So actually, he's living in Austin now. But the fact is that he would never ask me to do that. We fostered a real friendship. Like Ivan Meisner, he's endorsed both of my books. I've been on his podcast multiple times. But he would do that because he believes in me, and therefore he's willing to champion my work. And that's why I call it championship relationships. But I do want to highlight that the reason I break it into two is because I believe that since the digital age has started, especially, that you don't need to rely on one type of person because when you think about sponsor, you think somebody higher than you that can endorse you. And that's why I call it a champion, because I feel like they should be championing you, not just sponsoring you. I feel like that word is stronger. But the concept of momentum partnerships is what I really like, which is if you've got people that are around the same level as you, you have different doors open that they don't. And if you believe in what they do and they believe in what you do, then why would you not support each other and become momentum partners and help each other with their careers? You might have an association connection. They might have a different group that they can open the door to, or they might get you on a podcast. They might be able to introduce you to somebody that can become one of your future champions. I know one of my momentum partners was the one that introduced me to Ivan Meisner, who I'm forever grateful for. But the reason I'm saying this is that for me, I believe in my book, I talk about one person that came as a prospect, and truthfully, I turned her into a momentum partnership. And since then, I can attribute over $1 million worth of revenue from podcast doors that she's opened up for me. And I know that I've done at least the same for her. So, and I'm proud of that. I feel like the best momentum partnerships can be far more important than some of your champions. But the champions are the ones that give you the credibility to be able to get a pay rise, to get that top job. The momentum partners, I feel, are the ones that open the doors for you that you just can't open for yourself, because you genuinely want to do the same for them, because you believe in what they do and you want to see them succeed. So I just want people to know that each person doesn't need to do everything for you. And if you do your homework and you do your research, or you come across as wanting to help and assist them, to Callie's point around, make sure that, don't say, oh, can you give me some mentorship on sales or networking, but say, hey, I read your book, and by the way, I introduced, I've already shared it with 100 people, but I had this one question. Or make a couple of LinkedIn posts about how wonderful the book is, and then reach out and say, hey, I was hoping to get this question answered. So you can give value to your sponsor or champion or momentum partner, to use those words. But I just feel that these days there's so much value you can give someone that you want to get their attention, that they should reach out to you almost, which I've seen happen time and time again. People get my attention all the time, and I'm forever reaching out to be grateful, and then find out they've got a question, which of course I'd be honored to help.
Interesting to hear the difference in vocabulary words and what they kind of associate in our minds, because as Kelly said, like the word mentorship intimidates me. I feel like, oh my gosh, that's going to take a lot of time. But champion, it's like, if I like somebody, I'll be a champion. Like, I don't even think about it. But the idea of mentorship, I'm like, oh my gosh, do I have the time to invest in that? I don't think I do. So it's really interesting. And a shout out to Ivan, who would have been here, except that he's traveling. And then he put forth two of his co-authors from BNI. And unfortunately, they had conflicts too. So shout out to Ivan. Let's go to segment 4.
Networking is most effective when built on trust, authenticity, and long-term connections. A genuine approach prioritizes meaningful conversations over short-term gains. Asking insightful questions, actively listening, and offering value without expecting immediate returns strengthens relationships. Diversity in a network expands perspectives and opportunities. Engaging with individuals from different backgrounds helps avoid echo chambers and fosters innovation. Attending inclusive networking events and joining professional groups that promote varied representation creates stronger professional circles. Ethical networking requires respecting privacy, maintaining boundaries, and avoiding transactional behaviors. Over-networking, excessive name-dropping, and self-serving interactions erode trust. Instead, focus on consistency, reliability, and mutual support. Social media offers broad networking potential, but requires mindful engagement. Sharing insights, acknowledging others' contributions, and maintaining professionalism ensure credibility. Ethical networking builds a reputation based on integrity, leading to lasting and beneficial professional relationships.
Matthew, I'm going to start with you since you may have to drop off. In your experience, what's the ethical way to ask for help or introductions when you don't yet have that deep relationship? It sounds like you're masterful at making that transition.
I mean, I feel like the number one rule of networking is it's not about you. So, I mean, for me, and I didn't frame the last part of my networking script, but, you know, I say, so one of the things I love to see, ... I hate to see this. Do you know anyone like that? And then I say, well, I'm on a mission to help introverts realize they're not second-class citizens. Their path to success is just different. And then I might go into a story, or I might say, well, I'm on a mission to help these people realize they're not, you know, they really can have a rapid growth business doing what they love, just not by getting better at their functional skill, but instead focusing on these three simple things. And what I find is when I talk about the mission that I'm on, people don't want to support somebody that is, well, my day job's this, which is what most people do when they're doing aimless networking, or the elevator pitch, which is so I centric. So notice the difference in what I say. One of the things I love to see is this. What I hate to see is this, and I'm on a mission to do this. It's got nothing to do with me. It's about the change I want to see in the world, or the people that I want to help, or the organizational change that I want to see. It's less I-centric, it's more heart-centric. And what I've found is the moment that I say that, yes, it's contrived, but it's after I've been interested. And on top of that, they're asking, because I said I'm the rapid growth guy. That confuses people. So people lean in and they ask, what is that? Then I explain, do you know anyone like that? Then I say yes, and I go into a mission, and then I tell a story. It's the science behind storytelling, the science behind what's called a hook statement, and hitting people with passion and mission, which no one witnesses in a networking room, gets people to want to help you. Especially, and if you think about this, if you were interested and you follow the advice that I just provided of actually offering them introductions, not because you're doing it because, I mean, I always tell people they should catalog their audience. I'm always blown away to find out who's what podcast host or head of an association or senior executive in the family that would be helpful to so many people. I always genuinely think, how can I provide introductions that will serve people? And then when I start talking about the passion and the mission that I have, people go out of their way to help me because they love helping someone on a mission. They don't want to introduce someone that just needs another job or that's looking for a prospect. As a matter of fact, I do this all the time. I speak at events and I say, so who here knows why we go networking? And there's always someone that puts up their hand. Oh, it's to get clients. No, it's not. It's to make genuine connections. It's to build momentum partnerships. It's to build champions. Yes, prospects might keep the lights on, just like getting another job will keep the lights on. But developing real and lasting momentum partnerships and champion relationships, that's what keeps getting you paid more and allows you to choose your job and continually do jobs that you love, as opposed to settling for jobs that you're offered, or, you know, gigs that you're offered, depending on whether you're a business owner or whether you're a career professional. So for me, I believe that if we're consistent with networking, we're never running into a networking room to get a new job or to get a client. We're actually building lasting relationships with people we can add value to, which fixes the ethical problem. I'm not reaching out because it's about me. I'm not making it about me. I'm genuinely on a mission to help people, and I genuinely want to help other people. And when I reach out to people, even on LinkedIn, I'm forever reaching out because I'm a fan of their work, and I want to just share the fact that I really liked this specific thing they said in their book. You know, Marshall Goldsmith has endorsed my books, and it was, you know, I've never met him. I mean, I'm on his global gurus list of top 30 sales professionals, which he puts out all the time. But I've never met the guy. And yet he's endorsed my work and he supported me because I reached out to him on LinkedIn and humbly told him that I thought his work was great and things that I liked about it, and then asked him to endorse my book. And he checked out the manuscript and he did. Now, I think that a lot of people, they go in to any conversation, and I'm pretty sure it was Susan that said this, that they've got "I'm in it for myself" written all over their forehead. And I think that's obvious. I think what people have witnessed well, at least I hope people have during this session, is every single person has referenced the other. Susan went as far as saying, no, David, I'm going to quote you on that, because that's what people that are good networkers do. I feel that people that are open and honest come across as safer people to network, because people that are open and honest tend to be more authentic, because they're humble. People that are willing to offer introductions that are actually helpful and genuinely share that they care about helping someone else, rather than I do this for this group of people, which basically says this is what I do for money, or hey, I'd love to get you as a client because I'm dying to buy a new car, and if I got you as a client, it would really help with that. That stuff isn't authentic. It's not ethical. It's strategic, it's transactional, it's gross. And that's why, I feel that even a lot of small talk isn't comfortable for me. And so that's why my method doesn't even include small talk. It's really focused on being authentic and really being strategic about how you show up so that you can portray the best version of yourself every time. And if you do that with a genuine care to help, you'll be blown away at how much people will help. If you go in with a transactional mindset, you'll be blown away at how many people come across as takers to you. And actually, it's because you're the taker.
Love the framing and the tactics. Someone was about to speak? I heard someone breathe. No?
God, I hope that was all of us.
Well said. Matriarch. Mingling
Do you want to
Maven.
tell them why you called me matriarch?
You told me that these days you go by a matriarch, Mingling Maven.
Yes, matriarch of mingling. And it's so funny because as I listened to Matthew, you mentioned people who I've known for years, but I would share a great Ivan Meisner story that he has in one of his books that's about gender-based differences in networking. He said he goes to the cleaners. He brings his clothes, they clean them, he picks them up, he gives them money, he walks out. After I told him the story of how my cleaners did this and that, whatever, and he says, that's the difference. You have a relationship and I'm just getting my cleaning. And it was so hit that home because I said to him, I was one of the few customers invited to her husband's memorial because we have a relationship. But it went back to, I couldn't even imagine going into the cleaning store or the bakery and just transacting for money. I expect when they say, how are you? They want an answer. And I expect when I say to them, how are you doing? That they will tell me. And here's the key. It's everything you said. You said, Kelly, we have to listen when people talk. A person for research that my darling speech coach, Dawn Bernhardt, mentioned, Ralph Nichols, did the research on listening. 90% of memory is that you listen to people. And when you focus on people when they're talking, your memory will be stronger for that. And then you can always hold things against them because you remember it naturally without having to look at a phone. You could tell I'm from Chicago. Anyway.
What is this? It's only because it came up with something Susan said and Matthew said, and I think of all of David's comments in terms of authenticity. And it was a panel discussion that I was in the audience for, and one of the women, she was general counsel for a pharmaceutical company, and she had was probably a career transition, maybe a career reentry panel, and she talked about going back into the practice of law, and a pivotal moment that turned her from, hey, I've, kind of just gone back to work and I'm going to plod away at a, boutique law firm, doing litigation, to a transformative conversation. It was because of this, I would say genuine interest, authenticity on both sides of the conversation, and the paying attention to body language and all of these things. And she was like a Saturday morning, she's pruning roses. Her neighbor comes out and he says, hey, how are you? Here you started, a new job. Congratulations. She's like, thank you. And he's like, well, how's the job going? And there was something about you know what? It's going really well, that caused him to say, tell me more. What's so great here you've raised your kids and gone back to practice law and you're kind of look happy about it. Like maybe that was the inquiry. But the conversation continued where both of them could have just left it. I think when we were saying like not liking small talk, we could both leave it at this, hey, how are you? Oh, good. You could just do that ping pong. Instead, they both leaned into the conversation. And this guy says to her, you know what? It sounds like you really like these people. And I know what it takes, like the understanding what somebody else needs to be successful. Like Matthew's pointed out, do they need an introduction, right? Like, what does someone need to be successful? How can I be that momentum partner? He said, I don't think it's going to lead anywhere, but let me send you a little piece of work because I know that you've just started at this firm and they're a small firm. And if you can show that you can bring in business, this will be good. And this is like the kicker, the funny part of the story that could be a film. It probably was. The little piece of work that he sent that he didn't think was going to go anywhere was the silicone breast implants litigation, which for a period of time was the largest class action in US history. And it all started over a picket fence on a Saturday morning because two people decided to care about each other. And they decided to take, idle ping pong, small talk banter. How are you? How are the kids? And they actually decided to listen to each other. And someone decided to answer, the question honestly, just as Susan shows with her dry cleaner, like, I'm genuinely interested in how you're doing. And I think that's part of the magic of these, when you decide and choose to have an authentic introduction, you don't know what's going to lead. It might just be a nice conversation and the dry cleaner's day is better, right? It might be that you get the biggest piece of work in your life, or you find out something marvelous happened to someone else. And doesn't that make for a great day?
I love the idea that like not having an agenda. And I think you're right about it, Kelly. It's you're just trying to be a better human being, and you don't know where it's going to go. Sometimes you just make somebody's day better.
Isn't that what makes working hard? You have to deal with human beings, and we are squirrely and weird. Like what we want one day is not what we want the other day.
We're moody too. Sometimes we're having a bad day. Sometimes we're having a good day. Exactly. So the interaction can be different depending on what day it is. Yeah. David, I want to ask you, since you talk about building community as a vehicle of belonging, and I think that that's kind of a common thread that's been going on through here, right? We're trying to build connections with people. We're trying to cultivate this sense of belonging. That's how we end up appreciating one another and being willing to be a champion for somebody. How do you create that inclusive network?
Yeah. So I want to kind of build on the conversation that we're all just having around. And I think this ties in with whether or not you should have an agenda. And I think that if you do have an agenda, you shouldn't pretend like you don't. Right? Because you might take this advice and be like, oh, I need to just conceal the agenda and act like I'm interested in their legal job that they're doing now, right? I think the approach that I try to take that's worked for me is to just be honest and to ask for permission, to ask for consent. And so here's a really random example. Recently, I've started to call on this. I became a coach recently, right? So it's a whole new career path for me. I'm learning a lot very quickly. And there's this very experienced coach that I've known for many years that I reached out and I asked for advice when I was really struggling. And I noticed, because I'm a people pleaser, I get so concerned about asking too much of their time or asking too much of somebody. And so I was like worried about asking this person for help. I did have an agenda. I wanted his help. I wanted his advice. I wanted his wisdom. And up to that point, he was like more than happy to give it to me. He seemed really engaged, but I didn't want to ask for too much. So instead of assuming, I just asked, how can I ask for your help in a way that honors your time? And at first he was just like blown away that I asked that, because usually people just ask for your time and don't take into account whether or not that's how you want to help. But when you ask somebody like, hey, I really want your help, I want your wisdom, but I want to do so in a way that's respectful of you, they might tell you like, great, like I can do 1 call a month, or I'd rather not do calls, but I'm happy to help over email or text. Or maybe they're like, I would love to be your formal mentor. Maybe that's something they're looking for. So I think like just being upfront and being honest about whether or not you have an agenda, but doing it in a way that gives the other person the autonomy is a really ethical way of asking for help.
I love how you turned your fear into, you turned it around with openness.
I mean, if there's one thing I've learned, I just name my own insecurities, and that tends to take away the sting a lot
And
of the
it's
time.
charming, David. It's charming.
Thank you for that reflection, Susan. I want to one point on the community side, because you asked about building ethical belonging and community. So there's like 2 questions that I like to ask when looking at a community. First is, who isn't here that should be here?
Oh,
Right. So we organize communities, and it might be around like a profession, like, oh, we're going to get lawyers together. Okay, well, if we're trying to get lawyers together, and I look at the makeup of this room or this community, who isn't here that should be here? And is anybody not here that isn't based on the requirements of the community? So it could be race, gender, age. Are there any things that are blocking people from coming into this community when really they should be here? And then you could break down those barriers to make sure that those people are welcome. So that's the first question. Who isn't here that should be here? Then the second question, which is a little spicier, is who is here that shouldn't be here? Right? Because when you're building community, it's really important that you're intentional about who's in the room. And I like to take an empathetic exclusion approach, right? You need to exclude to some extent, but you want to do so empathetically and intentionally, not based on some sort of implicit bias, but you might say like, this is a community for lawyers who have at least 20 years of experience, right? Because we really want to have a type of conversation that only people who've been in this industry for a long time can have. And so if someone's there who's brand new, maybe that isn't the person that should be in that community. And by doing that, by empathetically excluding some people, what you allow to happen is a much more inclusive conversation for others, because now it's designed intentionally for them. So who isn't in the room that should be, and then who is in the room that shouldn't be.
Does anybody raise their hand to answer that second question?
I don't. You're not asking that to others. It's more of a reflective question as you're observing the community. Yeah, you're observing the dynamics of the community. Like you might notice someone in the community, it's like their energy is way off, or they're taking up way too much space, or the reason that they're in the room is the wrong reason. And so you, as a community facilitator, part of your job is to curate that space to make sure the right people are in the room.
Love the thought process, Kelly.
Well, I was going to say, some of the words we've used that people have said, oh, I don't like these words. But, when I think about strategy with respect to networking, and what, David has just said is like, there was times I like to fire myself from certain communities and certain networks, because I'm like, here is why you asked me to be part of this. This is what I could contribute. And that time is over. Or here is what is going to happen to my time. Here is what you've been asking me to do, to devote. And guess what? I can't do that anymore. Do you still want me to be part of this? So, well, people themselves may not be like someone like a third party to ask them to leave. I like to fire myself routinely, from these situations when I don't feel that I can contribute and be part of the community or the network in the way that the network or the community deserves.
Today I'm hosting, I call it the gracious exit of a group that I created 5 years ago during the pandemic of speakers. To be honest, it's the group that went to the Jewish service. And for 5 years, we have really banded together, but it is now time. And it goes back to what you said in community. It was really, I took the signal from Patricia Fripp, who was the president of our Golden Gate Breakfast Club. We brought in speakers from all over. It was great. but she noticed that the group had been together like since 1946. People weren't stepping up to run, and they had a phenomenal, I happened to be in Venice, I couldn't be there, but they had a phenomenal finale. And so today at 4:00, I did do a little bit of surveying, but also being the community leader that started something that realizes like firing myself and going out on a wonderful note. I didn't even think of myself as a community leader, David, till I heard what you said and what Kelly said, and I went, "Oh my God!" It's also knowing. It's like when a sports figure or a CEO exits when things are good, because what you don't want is to exit when they're on the downside, or you're less effective, or you're too whatever. So you both have given me a real nice shot in the arms. Oh my God. Shot in the arm. But
A good shot.
thank you. And I don't think a lot of us realize that we can create our own communities. I was just with a friend yesterday who's also on LinkedIn, and we were saying she's creating a community in her community, and it's all you have to do is say, gee, back in San Francisco, we had women's networks and men's networks, which they called the Chamber of Commerce. So what I wanted was a mixed group. And what I did is I invited 4 people and told them to invite a couple people. We can build it. And I think it's even equally important when it's time to fire yourself and or fire the group. But you both take me back. Oh my gosh, I sound like I'm just that person that's saying back in the day.
So much good stuff here. At risk of overstepping my boundaries of keeping these guests on and the audience their time, let's wrap it up, or let's bring it home with the last segment, and we'll try to move.
Sustaining a strong network requires consistency, strategic engagement, and providing value. Staying top of mind involves sharing relevant insights, engaging with others' content, and maintaining periodic check-ins without overwhelming contacts. A well-timed message or a thoughtful share can reinforce connections without feeling transactional. When requesting introductions or referrals, clarity is essential. Clearly state the reason for the introduction, provide relevant background, and express appreciation. Following up with both parties ensures professionalism and strengthens trust. Collaboration opportunities emerge by identifying shared goals and aligning values. Successful partnerships require trust, well-defined roles, and structured agreements. Networking is a long-term process. Maintaining relationships even as careers evolve creates opportunities for future growth. Thought leadership, industry engagement, and strategic content sharing amplify influence and position professionals as valuable contributors in their fields. Adaptability and genuine connections drive long-term success.
Kelly, you encourage professionals to audit their network. What does a healthy long-term network actually look like?
Oh, this is one of those answers where you get to say, it depends, right? So, I mean, at any point in time, the network you had when you were coming out of university, getting your first job, and the network you need when you are mid-career versus doing a career transition, all those things are slightly different. But I think in terms of just all of us, do an audit on the health of your network. Do you have enough diversity in there? And by diversity, I mean in the fullest, kind of broadest use of the term. Do you have people who are across industries, job titles, geographies, like you name it? Or are you sitting in an echo chamber? What is it that you're trying to achieve and do? And are you getting the right information sources and inputs to help you do that? To use Matthew's words, those momentum partners, or to find those champions or sponsors. Like, some of this is looking at your own patterns and behaviors of how you're showing up on a regular basis to say, am I doing enough to engage the network I have? And what is this network? So, part of this conversation, we've been very much sort of almost the thing that people most fear of, which is networking. I like to say the busy work. Walk into that room of strangers, terror, all that rest of stuff, rather than saying, based on my behaviors and actions, based on the choices I have made with my time, based on whether I have been considerate and following up and being gracious and being generous and helping others, who are the people who are surrounding me? And on the basis of this, do I have, right? Is there a great mix of people here that are going to enable, my ideas or my career to expand in interesting ways? Or have I pigeonholed myself? I mean, I personally pigeonholed myself quite fabulously early in my career. And it was only when I wanted to do something bigger than continue to double down in that one very narrow area of the law that I realized, like, okay, I got a few people somewhere else, but to make this, at the time, it wasn't that big of a career move, but it was a big career move. I really needed to expand in different ways, and realizing that I had left my career, my professional happiness so vulnerable by only having strength in one area of my network. This is why I'm really adamant with people. Your resilience in your career is not going to become because of a skill set other than your skill set in building relationships. And if you have a variety of relationships, you'll be fine, regardless of what, the Dow is doing or anything else. You will be fine if you have relationships who will back you up.
So networking diversification, just like a portfolio diversification.
Right. But a diversity of relationships. Susan, you were going to say something.
I was going to say something. 1993, Secrets of Savvy Networking. I talked about if everyone in your network, I just went looked through the book. I went, God, I wrote a good book. But if everyone in your network looks like you, came from where you came from, goes to the same, I was going to say spa because I live in Marin, but I mean, goes to the same house of worship. If everyone is of just like you, that would mean I would have to be only friends with people from Chicago who talked school, who are under 5 feet tall, who like deep dish pizza. That would be so delimiting. And I was really, because I lived in San Francisco and taught, David, in your neighborhood. To me, to not have a diverse network, diversity of race, religion, interests, background, makes us so poor. The more we expand and bring in, I mean, if I tell you who I'm Auntie Susan to, it's like, oh my goodness, it's a mosaic. And that makes me strong and that makes me rich. Has it enhanced my bank account? Well, I think people don't understand what the word rich means, and it means different things to different people. But I'm 100% with both of you. I just think if we don't have people unlike us in our network, what they say is, if everyone in your network knows who you know, then you'll already be limited in who you'll meet. That's why I like to have people younger than I am. And when I was young, I used to have people that were older than I am. But I'm going to tell you, nothing keeps you younger, more with it, more alerted, more wise than a diverse network. And on so many levels, I just don't understand people that don't have it, but then I'm judgmental.
I think Susan dropped the mic when she's redefining what wealth is. David, community builders often think about sustaining engagement. So I just want to ask, what is your take on how do you keep relationships alive over time?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think to build on what Kelly and Susan are saying, diversity really matters because in the actual research behind how serendipity occurs, having variety really matters, right? You want to increase the surface area of the interactions you're having with people, and that could be the amount of people, and it's also the variety of people. The serendipity research also shows that that sometimes it takes years or even decades for serendipity to occur, right? You might meet someone one day And then 10 years later, that connection comes back in a way that you didn't expect at all. This just happened to me. One of the partners in the business downshift that I'm running now is someone that we met 10 years ago in an accelerator program and didn't talk for 10 years and just happened to come back together now. And so like the common advice you'd hear in community building is to have this steady cadence of touch points with people, like keep them engaged, keep them showing up. But my experience is that that's not always how it goes. Some people you're going to stay engaged with consistently over a long time, and other people are going to come in and out of your life. You may not talk to them at all, but then the universe just brings you back together in a way that you didn't expect. And so I think when we look at networking, taking a long-term view is actually a pillar of that practice. It's not like, oh, maybe I should think long-term. It's networking only happens in the long run, and it compounds and it builds. Using the financial analogies, it compounds over time, right? And it continues to build and build and build over decades, not over days.
I'm gonna guess, David, that your colleague you're working with now, your initial interactions in 10 years ago when you met, it was a positive experience.
Yeah, she was actually a mentor.
Right. So this is other research that people we're afraid to reach out to someone we haven't talked to in a long time. And I always say to them, well, what was your interaction 10 years ago? Because if you were a self-absorbed jerk, good luck reaching out, because that's the first thing they're going to think of when they see your name. But if there was that positive interaction, even if there's been that absence of time, the research shows that rush of warm feelings because you're remembering all those memories. And you can pick up that relationship, you can pick up that connection, like it's instantaneous, like time has not passed. So this is what I sort of think. How do you maintain long-term relationships? Like you make sure those first interactions are, good ones. Like show up every day, be that decent human being, which is clearly hard for a lot of people.
Be that decent human being. I started a pandemic. And it evolved a bit. My grammar school girlfriends from Chicago, we meet once a month.
That's awesome.
On Zoom.
Love it.
They had kids. I had this career. But now we've come together. And you know what we had in common? We knew each other's parents. We knew each other's brothers. One of my friends called me and she said she was getting married. She could, you believe my sister Bonnie did that? And who else could say to her, really, she hasn't changed? I think when we have a connection that's heartfelt, you can pick up the phone anytime. And the other thing I do is sometimes send the email with the headline said, a voice from your past returning. And I sometimes apologize. I don't know what I was thinking. I've been out of touch. I have no excuse. Here's another thing I do. If I find that Facebook or my photo app sends me a picture from yesteryear of the two of us when we were younger and looked really fabulous, I send them the picture and say, what a wonderful memory. It really, something that just reconnects you. So I think the fact that she was your mentor 10 years ago, and as Kelly said, a pleasant experience. I have a friend who, when she turned 50, went to one of those spiritual workshops. And she came, I'm showing my hand here, and she came out and shared with me a lesson that I have embraced. She said, now that I'm 50, that's when 50 was old. She said, my goal is that every person who has an interaction with me feels better because of it.
And that's the bow on this episode.
Boom.
Nothing else needs to be said.
I cannot express enough gratitude to our guest panelists today. We have set a record. This is the longest Inspired Money episode ever.
Wow.
And the 90 plus minutes that we spent together went by like in 30 minutes. That's how it felt. And this was just an action-packed 5 segments on building meaningful connections. one of my favorite takeaways from today's conversation is this: networking isn't about collecting contacts. It's about nurturing relationships that create value over time. We heard it time after time in the stories today. And it doesn't matter whether you're an introvert, whether you're a seasoned executive, or you're just starting out. The panel today showed that anyone can learn how to connect with authenticity, purpose, and generosity. So here's your assignment for the week. Thank you for watching or listening to the end. I want you to reach out to someone you haven't spoken to in a while, maybe a former colleague, mentor, someone you met at a conference. Just check in. No agenda, just a thoughtful message to say hello and reconnect. You never know what doors that simple gesture might open. If you found today's episode valuable, please be sure to share it with someone in your network. Don't forget to subscribe so that you do not miss our next conversation. And Inspired Money is created and produced by me and Bradley John Eaglefeather. Bradley is behind the scenes during the live stream, edited the segments. Chad Lawrence does our graphics, animation, and editing. Before we part ways, I want to give a big shout out to our amazing guests. If you found value in today's episode, please go follow their work and keep learning from the best. Susan RoAne is the best-selling author of How to Work a Room, also Secrets of, what's the title? Savvy Networking. Both timeless classics on networking with confidence. Learn more at susanroane.com and check out her podcast appearances. I'm sure that you'll laugh, learn, and leave ready to mingle. J. Kelly Hoey, she wrote Build Your Dream Network, a smart modern guide for growing real relationships in this digital world that we live in. You can find her at jkellyhoey, that's HOEY.co. Is that right, Kelly? .co. And you can catch her on podcasts where she shares brilliant insights for professionals and entrepreneurs alike. David Spinks is author of The Business of Belonging and a true pioneer in the community building movement. You can dive deeper at davidspinks.com and explore his work if you're growing a brand, leading a team, or building something bigger than yourself. And Matthew Pollard, who dropped off a little bit early because he had places to be. He drops so much value. The Introvert's Edge. He is author. He's a rapid growth strategist. And he proves that introverts can thrive in sales and networking. Find him at matthewpollard.com. And be sure to check out his Introvert's Edge podcast for more practical tools and inspiration. I will be going to listen to that Ivan episode. Inspired Moneymakers, follow these leaders, grab their books, apply what you've learned, because your next opportunity might just start with the next conversation. Did anyone want to plug anything before we part ways?
I just want to say what a joy it has been being with you. And do I call you Jay or Kelly?
I'm the middle child who parents called me by the middle name. So it's like this damn annoying thing. So yes, just call me Kelly.
Okay.
The J's there because of my old Twitter handle.
Okay, I'm the oldest and my parents didn't have the time to give me a middle name. So what can I tell you? And David, the four of us, I can't tell you, you're my people. That's all I can say.
It's been a joy. Just been a joy.
Thank you for sharing that sentiment. Thank you, Inspired Moneymaker, for joining us. For the next couple of weeks, Inspired Money is actually taking off for a little R&R. We will be back Wednesday, July 2nd at 1 p.m. Eastern. Our topic, classic car restorations, reviving automotive legends. It's going to be fun. I will see you then. Until next time, do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens. Thanks, everybody.